The modern world loves to tell its story as progress. We are told that globalization connected countries, opened markets, spread technology, and created opportunity. And in some ways, that is true. Goods cross oceans. Money moves in seconds. A person can speak to someone on the other side of the planet from a phone in their hand. But connection is not the same as justice. A world can become more connected and still remain deeply unequal, still remain violent, still remain careless toward the people it depends on most. A world that celebrates connection while ignoring what that connection costs is not a better world. It is just a faster one. Many people believed that when the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, the world was entering a new age, an age of peace, of cooperation, of shared prosperity. What followed was not a new world. It was the old world in a new suit. The Cold War division disappeared, but new structures of power replaced it. Markets expanded, corporations grew stronger. International institutions accumulated influence over the decisions of entire nations. The language changed from empire to development, from conquest to investment, from control to security. But the structure underneath stayed exactly the same. A few accumulated. Many absorbed the cost. That structure was not an accident. It was a choice. In the 20th century, two ideas competed for control of the global economy. John Maynard Keynes argued that governments had a responsibility to intervene when markets failed, because poverty and despair could destroy democracy itself. Friedrich Hayek argued the opposite, that markets worked best when left alone. After World War II, Keynesian ideas won. Governments built welfare states. They regulated banks. They protected workers. But in the 1970s, that changed. Leaders like Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan seized an economic crisis as an opening. They pushed deregulation, privatization, weaker unions, lower taxes for the wealthy, free markets above all else. This was not a neutral economic adjustment. It was a political decision about who the economy would serve. The documentary China Blue shows us exactly who paid for that decision. Her name is Jasmine. She is a young woman from rural China who leaves her family to work in a jeans factory. For the consumer in a store, globalization means affordable clothing. For the company placing the order, it means lower costs. For Jasmine, it means 16-hour shifts, crowded dormitories, wages withheld for months, and the particular loneliness of being far from everyone she loves. The jeans become visible on the rack. Jasmine disappears behind them. This is not a side effect of globalization. This is how it was designed to function, by making suffering portable, by making it invisible, by moving it far enough away that the people benefiting from it can stop seeing it. The 2008 financial crisis made that same logic impossible to ignore, at least for a moment. Banks took risks they should never have been permitted to take. Regulators failed, or were prevented from doing their jobs. When the system collapsed, ordinary people lost homes, jobs, and savings they would never fully recover. Governments rescued the institutions that caused the damage. The families those institutions helped destroy were largely left to manage on their own. This revealed something very old, hiding underneath something very modern. When powerful people gamble and win, they keep the reward. When they lose, the public absorbs the damage. That realization fueled rage. And rage, when it has nowhere honest to go, becomes dangerous. Some people directed their anger at the system itself. Others were taught to direct it somewhere else, at immigrants, at refugees, at minorities, at foreign nations. This is one of the oldest tools of power. When people are suffering, teach them to blame each other. Keep the structure that harms them intact. Make the wound feel like it has a face. Migration shows this contradiction most clearly. Globalization tells money and products to move freely across borders. It celebrates that freedom. But when poor and desperate people move, they are treated as a crisis. People migrate because of war, because of poverty, because of climate change and political instability, forces that globalization itself helped create. In Europe, the refugee crisis of 2015 exposed the tension between humanitarian values and nationalist fear. In the United States, immigration became a political weapon, wielded through border walls, the Muslim ban, family separation, and attacks on young people who had known no other country. The contradiction is rarely spoken aloud. Wealthy countries need immigrant labor to function, but they refuse immigrants the full recognition of their humanity. They want the work. They do not want the worker. After September 11th, 2001, the world organized itself around fear. More than 3,000 people were killed in a single morning. The grief was real. The anger was real. But fear, when it becomes the foundation of policy, is also a tool. The United States invaded Afghanistan, then Iraq, under false claims about weapons of mass destruction. Military power proved capable of destroying governments. It could not build justice. The Taliban returned to Afghanistan in 2021. Iraq was left fractured and vulnerable to the very extremism the invasion claimed to prevent. At home, surveillance expanded. Guantanamo became a symbol of imprisonment without trial. Abu Ghraib exposed systematic torture. The language was always freedom and security. The methods consistently violated both. When people are afraid enough, they accept things they would otherwise refuse. They stop asking whose lives are being sacrificed. They stop asking who decides. The Arab Spring showed what happens when people decide they have absorbed enough. In 2010, Mohamed Bouazizi, a vegetable vendor in Tunisia who had been humiliated and robbed of his dignity by local authorities, set himself on fire. His act ignited protests across the Arab world that governments had spent decades trying to prevent. Tunisia's ruler fled. Egypt's Hosni Mubarak, a dictator backed for decades by Western governments, was forced from power. For a moment, it seemed like ordinary people could change everything. But in most places, the Arab Spring became an Arab winter. Egypt returned to military rule. Syria collapsed into civil war. Yemen became the world's worst humanitarian crisis. The lesson is not that people should not resist. The lesson is that removing a dictator is not the same as dismantling the conditions that made the dictator possible. Power does not disappear when protesters fill the streets. It waits. It reorganizes. And when the moment comes, it returns. Sometimes wearing a uniform, sometimes wearing a suit. Ordinary people kept resisting anyway. Black Lives Matter grew into a global movement after Derek Chauvin pressed his knee into George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds, while bystanders filmed and pleaded and Floyd called for his mother. People protested on every continent. Because racial hierarchy and state violence are not uniquely American problems. They are features of systems built globally that have not yet been fully dismantled. LGBTQ rights expanded in many countries, but visibility is not safety. Rights gained can be taken back. Dignity still has to be defended. Every generation, in every place, against every system that finds it inconvenient. Václav Havel argued that authoritarian systems depend on one thing: the willingness of people to pretend the lie is true. When even one person refuses, when one person lives openly within the truth, the entire architecture of the lie becomes visible. The Zapatistas declared in 1994 that they were the product of 500 years of struggle. They demanded not charity. They demanded dignity. Amartya Sen demonstrated that no major famine has ever occurred in a functioning democracy with a free press, because governments cannot indefinitely ignore suffering when people can criticize, organize, and speak. Democracy is not just a system of elections. It is the power of ordinary people to remain visible to power and to hold it accountable when it forgets them. But the most invisible victim of this era is not only the worker, not only the migrant, not only the refugee. It is the planet itself, and every living being forced to share the consequences of human ambition without ever having chosen to. We built a civilization that measures success by growth, production, and conquest, almost never by protection. Fossil fuels, industrial agriculture, deforestation, mass consumption, these have turned human behavior into a planetary force. Scientists warned in 2019 that 1 million plant and animal species face potential extinction if current patterns continue. The Amazon, one of the most biodiverse places that has ever existed, has been burned and bulldozed for profit. The oceans are filling with our waste. The planet is not being treated as a living home. It is being liquidated. COVID-19 revealed the same truth in a different form. A virus became global within months because the world is woven together through travel, trade, and supply chains that cross every border. But the suffering was not equal. Poor workers, migrants, and marginalized communities were hit harder, died at higher rates, and recovered more slowly. The pandemic did not create inequality. It traveled through inequality that was already there and made it impossible to pretend otherwise. The world had built enough connection to spread a virus to every corner of the earth in weeks. It had not built enough compassion to protect everyone equally when it arrived. This is the pattern. We globalized markets faster than we globalized responsibility. We globalized entertainment faster than we globalized empathy. We globalized consumption faster than we globalized protection. We were trained through schools, through advertising, through political systems to compete, achieve, and measure ourselves by what we accumulate. But history keeps returning to a question that accumulation cannot answer. What do we protect? Who do we protect? What happens to the people, the animals, the forests, the oceans, and the generations not yet born, who cannot compete inside a system that is consuming them? Gandhi did not defeat empire by learning to play the empire's game better. He refused the game's moral logic entirely. He looked at a system built on domination and said, "I will not cooperate with this. Not with anger, not with violence, with discipline, with sacrifice, with moral clarity." His example matters because he understood what this era still struggles to learn. Real change does not begin when leaders become compassionate. It begins when ordinary people stop accepting the rules that make harm look normal. And harm has become very normal. Cheap clothing is normal. Factory exhaustion is normal. War in the name of security is normal. Billionaires accumulating power while workers cannot afford rent is normal. Borders that stop desperate human beings while capital moves freely is normal. Animals inside industrial systems, never seeing sunlight, never moving freely, existing only to be processed, is normal. Forests burning for profit is normal. But normal is not natural. Normal is not moral. Normal is what power teaches people to stop questioning. And the moment we stop questioning it, we become part of maintaining it. Change does not begin when we wait for powerful people to develop a conscience. It begins when ordinary people stop cooperating with harm. Havel called it living within the truth. The Zapatistas called it dignity. Sen called it democracy. Gandhi called it nonviolence. I call it protection, because that is what all of them were ultimately doing, protecting life against systems designed to consume it. A connected world is not enough. A wealthy world is not enough. A technologically advanced world is not enough. If our systems still require that someone, somewhere, absorb pain so that someone else can remain comfortable, then we have not progressed. We have only modernized the machinery of the old harm. The future will not be saved by connection alone. It will be saved only if connection becomes responsibility. History is not a force that moves without us. History is made by what people accept, what they resist, and what they refuse to normalize. If the world is organized around harm, the first act of change is to see it clearly. The second is to refuse it openly. The third is to build, carefully, stubbornly, and together, something that protects life instead of consuming it.